Why don't the anti-imperialists consider Russia's military operation a war against the Ukrainian people? We will try to briefly explain it in our video. A US-inspired coup d'etat in 2014 brought a pro-fascist junta to power in Ukraine. The USA thus carried out its fascist foreign policy, which it needs during the period of the general crisis of capitalism in order to preserve both the capitalist exploitative system and its dominance in the world. In Ukraine, open terror began against the communists, opponents of the Maidan, against those who advocated normal relations with Russia and the Russian people. Russophobic nationalist propaganda intensified. Nazi armed groups were given free rein. In economic terms, the country was plundered. Investments went into the pockets of officials, thieves, state assets were sold to foreigners, and when they ran out, they switched to selling Ukrainian black soil. 8 years of neoliberal reforms in Ukraine led it to a catastrophe, the destruction of the economy and the extreme pauperization of the population, which was also deprived of many social and political rights. Moreover, when the people in the Donetsk and Lugansk regions of Ukraine opposed the coup and the pro-fascist policy of Kiev in 2014, the junta that came to power unleashed a war against them. This war has been going on for 8 years, during which the shelling of the territories, the population of which legally and fairly declared themselves the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, didn't stop. They were victims among the militias, and most importantly, the civilian population died. The Russian bourgeoisie leadership, proceeding purely from their own interests, on February 22nd recognized the independence of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics, and on February 24th launched a military operation in Ukraine with the aim of its demilitarization and denazification. The objects of the military operation are the military infrastructure of Ukraine, which are destroyed by high-precision weapons and its military equipment. Part of the military staff of the armed forces of Ukraine, when meeting with Russian troops or units of the People's Militia of Donbas republics, lays down their arms and/or goes over to their side. The Russian side emphasized that the military operation doesn't threaten the civilian population of Ukraine, and the Ukrainian military should be treated with respect. Of course, there are civilian victims in this military operation, but many of them could have been avoided if the Ukrainian armed forces were not covered by civilians as a human shield. It has already become commonplace for the Ukrainian military to install military equipment in residential neighborhoods, in the courtyards of schools, kindergartens. Therefore, after firing from them, the return fire of the Russian army destroys civilian infrastructure and can hurt civilians. Since the Russian leadership doesn't set itself the goal of occupying Ukraine, because this is not in the interests of the ruling group of the Russian bourgeoisie, as it will require huge financial, military, economic and human resources. The likely outcome of the military operation will be: first, the demilitarization of Ukraine, which in the coming years will exclude the continuation of the war of Kiev against the Donbas republics and the use by the United States of America of the territory of Ukraine to host NATO bases and a military threat to Russia. The second, bringing Nazi criminals to justice, including those who shot the Heavenly Hundred on the Maidan and massacred people in the House of Trade Union in Odessa. Third, change of leadership of Ukraine to pro-Russian, including it is possible that this will be carried out through completely legitimate bourgeois elections, and as a result a change in the regime from pro-fascist to bourgeois democratic. The fourth, restoration of economic, political, social, cultural ties with the fraternal peoples of Russia, Belarus, and a number of other formal republics of the USSR. The actions of the Russian leadership, therefore, are in the interests of both the peoples of the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic, who were threatened with a full-scale offensive by the armed forces of Ukraine, and the working people of Ukraine, crushed by want and lack of rights due to the pro-fascist, predatory policy of official Kiev. That is why the anti-imperialists come out in support of Russia in its military operation in Ukraine. Russia is not conducting a military campaign against the Ukrainian people. The Russian army is now striking at the pro-fascist Kiev junta, as well as at the main enemy of the peoples, imperialism.